My younger sister, Hannah, was the golden child. The princess who always got the better slice, the bigger room, and the unwavering favor of our parents. Her wedding to Blake Emerson, a man she believed was her ticket to Manhattan high society, was supposed to be her crowning moment. But for that moment to happen, she needed one thing. The ancestral home I lived in, the only safe haven for my 8-year-old daughter, Lily, and me. Hannah tried to buy me out, offering a pathetic $15,000 to sign away my rights. I refused. That refusal turned her beautiful day into a powder keg. When she finally snapped, right there in front of 300 guests, and physically attacked my little girl, my sweet, terrified Lily, I thought the world was ending. But what happened next wasn't the end of my world. It was the implosion of hers, a reckoning so swift and public that it made every year of her toxic entitlement worth it. They say karma is a dish best served cold. I served hers with a side of federal indictment. The air in the Grandview Estate ballroom was not just thick with expensive perfume and cloying expectation. It was heavy with the tangible weight of debt and silent judgment. The polished marble floors of the estate reflected the glittering chandelier lights back at the 300 or so guests, a shimmering testament to the kind of ostentatious wealth that both defined and tormented my family. My sister, Hannah the bride, had successfully manifested the wedding of a minor royal, all thanks to her fiancé, Blake Emerson, a man whose tailored Italian suits and practiced smile reeked of old money and, I increasingly suspected, brand new arrogance. Meanwhile, I, Sarah Miller, the older sister who worked 2 jobs just to keep my head above water, stood miserably in a corner, clutching the small, damp hand of my 8-year-old daughter Lily. My feet ached in the cheap, functional heels I'd bought for $30 just for the occasion. Every detail of the wedding, down to my painfully tight dress, was a silent, humiliating reminder of the chasm between Hannah's life and mine. Lily, wearing a stiff light pink flower girl dress that Hannah had specified, a dress that cost more than my monthly utility bills, looked like a nervous butterfly. She constantly adjusted the small, delicate basket of rose petals she held, a nervous habit that twisted my heart. She was the one genuine, unadulterated bright spot in my life, which had been a struggle since my husband, Ben, passed 3 years ago in an accident that left me with a mountain of grief and a stack of bills. Everything I did, every extra shift I took as an executive assistant at a regional marketing firm, and every freelance editing gig I squeezed in after 9 p.m., was for her. I would burn myself out to keep her safe and stable. The constant tension between Hannah and me wasn't new. It was the baseline of our relationship, a toxic sibling rivalry fueled by our parents' lifelong, flagrant preferential treatment. Hannah, 32, was perpetually beautiful, eternally pampered, and deeply resentful of my continued existence, particularly my claim on one specific asset, the ancestral home. The house was our grandmother's legacy, a charming triple-story Victorian in a rapidly gentrifying Chicago suburb. The only thing I owned that wasn't depreciating. The will was clear and, to Hannah's fury, intentionally restrictive. Gran, a shrewd woman who knew her granddaughters well, had stipulated that the house could not be sold until January 2026, unless both granddaughters agreed, or if neither of us resided there. She knew Hannah was careless with money and wanted to ensure at least one of us had a secure retreat. Since Lily and I had nowhere else to go and the property taxes were manageable thanks to a small, protected trust fund Gran had set up, I lived there. My residency, my safe, stable haven, was the single insurmountable roadblock to Hannah's grand plan. Hannah needed the house sold now. Her $250,000 wedding, featuring imported flowers and a 5-course meal, was already over budget, and Blake, it turned out, was putting up significantly less of his supposed old money than he pretended. They were relying heavily on the immediate cash infusion from the sale of the house, our shared $400,000 equity, to cover the final ballooning vendor payments and, crucially, fund the down payment on their pretentious Manhattan apartment, which they'd already signed a lease for. The pressure had been relentless for 6 months. A daily stream of venomous texts and emails threatening litigation. 3 weeks before the wedding, the conflict reached its cynical peak. Hannah cornered me at our parents' house, far from the estate, her blue eyes narrowed with venomous intent. "I have Blake's lawyer ready," she hissed, placing a stack of documents on the mahogany table with an aggressive thud. Sign the agreement to nullify the residency clause. We sell immediately after the honeymoon. Don't be stupid, Sarah. She slid a cashier's check across the table.
$15,000.
It's a gift, a wedding favor. Take it. It's more than you make in 3 months. You can buy yourself out of that dumpy house, pay your lawyer, and still have enough left for a used car. I stared at the check. The sight of the crisp numbers, the smell of the bank paper, made my head swim. $15,000. It was a staggering amount of money for me. It could pay off half my existing student loan debt. For a fleeting second, the brutal weight of my financial struggle almost won. I could taste the relief, the momentary freedom from the suffocating anxiety. But I looked past the money, seeing Lily's school, her friends, the familiarity of her lavender-painted room. The home was more than equity. It was stability, routine, and psychological security after losing her father. No, Hannah, I said, my voice barely a whisper, yet holding the firmness of rock. I pushed the check back across the polished wood. I've told you. I'm not signing. Gran wanted us to have security. This house is our security. $15,000 is a bribe for me to abandon the only stability my daughter has left in the world. Stability? You're living in a museum, working yourself into an early grave. Look at your shoes, Sarah. Your pathetic life is a testament to failure. She spat, snatching the check back and tearing it across the center before tossing the pieces onto the floor. You're just jealous because Blake has real money and I'm escaping this suburban nightmare. You refuse to cooperate because you want to watch me fail. I refuse because I'm protecting my child. I said, standing up, my knees shaking, yet my voice was steady. And if your entire future, your Manhattan dream, depends on forcing your sister and niece into a rental market we can't afford, then yes, your future is built on a very shaky, immoral foundation. And if it collapses, it's entirely on you. That was the last civil conversation we had. The battle lines were drawn. Now at the Grandview estate, the tension was suffocating. My parents, Carol and Dennis Miller, were their usual selves, human shields and apologists for Hannah. My father pulled me aside during the cocktail hour, his face creased with what he clearly thought was appropriate parental concern, though it was only concern for his image. Sarah, please, he pleaded, adjusting his silk tie and avoiding eye contact. Just sign the paper. It's $15,000. Hannah is so stressed, and this is her big day. Don't ruin this for her. It reflects badly on all of us. She's trying to sell the roof over my daughter's head, Dad, I whispered fiercely. And you're asking me to prioritize her vanity over my child's safety? You've always done this. He just sighed, shook his head, and walked away, confirming my lifelong reality. I was invisible when Hannah needed saving. The first hint of the deeper truth, twist 1, came during the toasts. Blake's best man, a clean-cut finance guy named Todd, seemed oddly nervous. His toast was short, vague, and focused heavily on Blake's hustle and entrepreneurial spirit, rather than any established, verifiable success. He drank his champagne too quickly, his eyes darting toward the head table. Later, as the DJ started and the lights dimmed, I was seeking a quiet corner near the catering station when I overheard Blake talking rapidly into his phone, shielded behind a massive floral arrangement. His voice was sharp with suppressed panic. I told you the Miller House sale must close everything. It covers the missing capital. Just hold the liquidation off until Tuesday. I need that wire transfer or I'm dead, you hear me? Dead. I lose everything. I lose everything. He scanned the room wildly, his eyes wide and unnerving, quickly hanging up when he spotted me watching him from the shadows. His terror was palatable. This wasn't just wedding debt. Blake was in a serious financial spiral tied to something complex and illegal, and my house was the escape hatch that would bail him out of a criminal situation. The actual meltdown happened right after the cake cutting. The air was charged with sugar and expensive alcohol. Lily, tired and overwhelmed by the noise and the general air of hostility, had been playing quietly near the massive floral arrangement, trying to rearrange the petals that had fallen to the floor. Hannah, glass of champagne in hand, approached me with a radiant, fake smile that was razor-thin. She carried the documents, new ones, prepared by Blake's desperate lawyer. One last time. Last chance, Sarah Bear, she cooed. calling me by a childhood nickname that sounded disgusting coming from her mouth. She reeked of alcohol and spite. Sign now. It stops Monday's litigation. You'll thank me later. The answer is still no, Hannah. I am not signing. I repeated, my voice now cold and weary. I looked her dead in the eye. And I have retained counsel. Try me. You won't win. That was it. The mask dropped completely. Her face, usually so perfectly composed for the camera, crumpled into a mask of pure, ugly, drunken rage. You selfish, wretched failure, she shrieked, her voice echoing off the high ceilings and instantly silencing the band. You just had to ruin it, didn't you? You and your pathetic, deadweight pauper child. The word pauper hit me hard, but before I could react, she moved. She lunged toward Lily, who had instinctively hidden behind my skirt. Hannah, driven by pure, unhinged entitlement, grabbed a fistful of Lily's beautiful, long blonde hair, yanking her out from behind me with shocking, malicious force. I heard a sharp, tearing rip sound, hair leaving the scalp, followed by Lily's shriek, a raw, terrified sound that sliced through the atmosphere. Stop it. You made us lose everything, you little brat. Hannah raged. The sight of her in a $15,000 designer gown physically assaulting an 8-year-old child was the most horrifying thing I had ever witnessed. I reacted instantly, adrenaline flooding my veins. I roared, a primal sound of maternal fury, pushing Hannah away with a force I didn't know I possessed. She stumbled violently back into a heavy banquet table, sending a towering vase of white lilies and water crashing to the ground with a thunderous smash. The sound of breaking glass was the only noise in the ensuing silence. I scooped Lily into my arms, holding her tightly as she buried her face in my shoulder, sobbing uncontrollably. The room was utterly silent, every single one of the 300 guests staring at the screaming bride, the broken glass, and the terrified child. My parents rushed over, but their focus, unbelievably, was still on their perfect daughter, soaked and disheveled. Hannah, darling, are you all right? Carol gasped, reaching for her, ignoring the hysterical child in my arms. She attacked my daughter. I yelled, my voice shaking with unshed tears and rage. She physically assaulted a child because I wouldn't let her sell our security. Hannah, defeated but still drunk, screamed back. She deserves it. She's nothing but dead weight who keeps you poor. Just as the chaos reached its absolute screaming peak, a tall, serious-looking man in a meticulously tailored dark suit stepped forward from a back table where the professional colleagues were seated. His name tag read Sterling, and I saw the discreet silver and blue pin on his lapel, Federal Law Enforcement. Mr. Blake Emerson? Agent Sterling asked, his voice calm, firm, and authoritative, cutting through the stunned noise like a razor. Blake, who had been frantically trying to pull Hannah away from the scene, froze. Who are you? I'm busy. Can't you see I'm at my own wedding? Agent Sterling didn't answer. Two other, equally serious men in dark suits, who had been subtly positioned near the main exits, stepped up, flanking Blake. United States Federal Bureau of Investigation, Mr. Emerson, Sterling announced, pulling out a badge and holding it high. You are under arrest for multiple counts of wire fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering. This is a federal matter. You have the right to remain silent. The bottom fell out of the room. A collective, deafening gasp rose from the guests, instantly drowning out the panicked chatter. Blake's face went from pale to ashen, collapsing completely. This is insane. You can't do this. This is my wedding, he shrieked, suddenly scrambling backward toward the emergency exit sign. The FBI agents were too fast and too professional. They grabbed his arms, pinning them behind his back. Blake fought, desperately, hysterically, shouting panicked denials that confirmed everything. You can't take me. The money is coming. The Miller House sale was going to cover the full exposure. It was all going to be covered. Blake screamed, his desperate confession cementing the fact that my house was not just about Hannah's vanity, but his own criminal necessity and the Ponzi scheme he was running. Hannah stood frozen, her mouth open, the remnants of her rage turning into abject, soul-crushing horror. The beautiful, perfect, multi-million-dollar wedding had officially devolved into a federal crime scene. As the agents hustled Blake out in handcuffs, the entire ballroom erupted into a frenzy of whispers, camera phones flashing, and guests scrambling for the exits, realizing they were witnesses to a federal indictment. I stood there, still holding my quiet, terrified daughter, watching the utter collapse of my sister's fantasy life. The shock of Blake's arrest was secondary to the chilling sight of my sister attacking my child. I gave a full statement to the local police officer who arrived later, focusing on the violence against a minor. The true consequences for Hannah unfolded over the next few months. Blake was swiftly indicted. His Ponzi scheme had been massive. The vendors were unpaid, and the money for the wedding was immediately seized as evidence. My house sale wasn't going to cover vendor costs. It was going to be seized by the federal government to satisfy the massive restitution order, completely removing it from Hannah's grasp. The entire family was disgraced. My parents, Carol and Dennis, were utterly broken, not by the moral shame of their son-in-law's crime, but by the public humiliation of their perfect daughter's spectacular failure. Hannah, suddenly stripped of her financial cushion and facing potential legal trouble for the assault. I had filed a formal complaint, refusing to withdraw it, was a wreck. Her friends evaporated faster than the champagne. A month later, she showed up on my doorstep, the doorstep of the house she had tried to force me out of. She looked sickly, hollow-eyed, and smelled faintly of cheap airline travel, having returned early from a humiliating, failed attempt to find work. "Sarah," she pleaded, her voice thin and cracked. "I need money. Please. Help me. The lawyers, they're asking about my involvement in Blake's finances. I need character references. I need you to drop the assault charges. I can't go to court for this." I looked at my sister, not the spoiled princess, but a desperate woman whose entitlement had finally caught up with her. I stepped back, blocking her entrance into the home that was now truly ours. "You know what you did, Hannah," I said, my voice quiet, but firm, the resolve radiating from me. "You didn't just ask me to sacrifice my stability. You tried to hurt my daughter. You grabbed her by the hair, Hannah. In front of 300 people. I have the police report." I saw the red marks on Lily's scalp. She started to sob hysterically, sinking onto the porch steps. "I know I'm sorry. I was drunk and stressed. It was a mistake. A terrible, horrible mistake." "It wasn't a mistake," I corrected her, stating the causal logic clearly. "It was the consequence of who you are when you don't get your way. I refused your $15,000 bribe because I valued my daughter's physical and emotional well-being over money. Now you're asking for my help because you value your freedom over your dignity. You are facing the consequences of your own actions finally." I didn't just refuse her. I used the crisis to finally gain what I truly needed: absolute control over Lily's future. The parents, shattered by the scandal and terrified of the negative press, finally saw the truth about their two daughters. My lawyer had the paperwork ready. They transferred their shared stake in the house trust to me, citing Hannah's gross moral turpitude in the documented assault case. I now own the house outright. "Here is my help, Hannah," I said, stepping onto the porch to meet her eye to eye. "I am dropping the assault charges on the condition that you legally sign away any and all future claims to this house, the trust, and the contents within. You will never contact me or Lily again, and you will never set foot on this property. This is non-negotiable. You will use your remaining funds for your defense against Blake's creditors. Choose." Hannah signed. She was handed a small packet of legal papers and walked away, a solitary figure disappearing down the street. I closed the door gently but firmly. My sister, the golden child, had finally lost everything because she couldn't accept no from the sister she deemed too poor, too weak, and too insignificant. And my daughter Lily, who was safely nestled in her own room, was finally, truly home. The peace I felt was worth more than all the money in Blake Emerson's fraudulent accounts.